Thank you for joining us today for a brief history of Halloween. My name is David and I am the Adult Services Specialist at the Amelia Branch Library.
And my name is Ross and I am the Adult Services Librarian at the Amelia Branch.
And we will be taking you through a brief journey on the history of Halloween. Halloween is one of the most popular and commercially successful holidays in the United States, second only to Christmas, but it wasn't always so. How a pagan festival from Ireland became a beloved holiday in the United States is a long one, spanning centuries. The origins of Halloween are developed in the midst of time. Indeed, historians still debate the meaning of the rituals first performed by the Celtic people over 2 millennia ago. The rituals have been interpreted differently over the years by historians, and we will do our best to explain the most common interpretations of the rituals enacted by the pre-Celtic and Celtic people. Most of the information we have is based on conjecture and speculation, since nothing was written down at the time. Almost every source interprets the information we have about Samhain, the festival that would become Halloween, differently. What information we have about the early origins of Halloween is derived from the Romans and Christians, secondary sources which don't give us a complete view of Samhain. Historians have tried to rectify some of the early misunderstandings of the festival, but some of the rituals may never be fully understood. There's even a dispute over where it began in Ireland. There are at least 3 possible locations. Some historians believe the beginning of Halloween started at the Oweynagat cave or Cave of Cats in Rathcroghan. The historians who believe it started here have discovered archaeological evidence dating back 5,500 years. Others believe it began at Tlachtga, or as it is now known, the Hill of Ward in County Meath. Skeleton remains from 3,000 years ago were discovered in 2014. And still other historians believe it started at Newgrange. The passage tombs are 5,200 years old. These are the 3 locations where historians currently believe Samhain began. The age of the festival is also subject to debate. It is at least 2,000 years old, but it could be 5,500 years old. It was originally celebrated on the eve of Samhain, since it took place on the eve of what most historians believe was the Celtic people's New Year's Day, November 1st. Most historians believe the festival of Samhain, which translates to summer's end, and is now the Irish word for November, marked the close of the harvest season and the becoming of winter. The Celts divided the year into 4 seasons and 4 festivities: Imbolc on February 1st, Beltane on May 1st, Luna Sa on August 1st, and Samhain on November 1st. It seems interesting that the most important festivals were celebrated in the middle of the equinoxes and solstices, considering the importance pagan religion showed to them. But as one source pointed out, liminality, or the in-between, was an integral component of ancient Celtic spirituality, and many important events in Celtic mythology took place in liminal spaces or at liminal times. The veneration the Celtic people paid to Samhain is directly connected to liminal spaces. According to historians, the Celts believed the veil between the worlds of the living and the dead were thinnest at this time of year, and so the dead could return and walk where they had before. The earth was in between the seasons of summer and winter, or life and death, and in their minds, the living and the dead could interact as one time of the year when the veil to both worlds lifted. The Oweynagat cave, also known as the entrance to hell, was one entrance to the underworld where Celts believed the dead existed. During the liminal time of Samhain, the spirits walked the earth and could interact with the living. Some of the creatures living interacted with included dead ancestors, elves, goblins, and fairies who pulled pranks and created mischief. The Celtic people feared some of the spirits during Samhain, and to ensure the people avoided any harm from the spirits, especially the fairies, elves, and goblins, the living put on disguises from dead animals or used the ash from the bonfires to deceive the spirits. But some historians believe they put on guises to impersonate dead ancestors. Wearing masks at the time could have been used to protect themselves and celebrate their dead ancestors. The use of guises eventually turned into people wearing masks and dressing up on Halloween. The Celts also carved faces into turnips, rutabagas, and gourds. This may have been a custom of head veneration, or it may have represented the heads of enemies, or it may have been a way to scare away the spirits roaming nearby. Whatever the reason, carving faces into fruits and vegetables became a tradition and eventually traveled with the Irish to the New World and to the current Halloween tradition of carving pumpkins. They also put the bones from the dead cattle into fires known as bonfires, which is the origin of our word bonfires. Again, historians dispute their meaning. They may have been used to protect the Celts from the spirits, or they may have been used to welcome them. Some believe the Celtic people would extinguish all the fires before Samhain. Then the Celtic priests, known as Druids, would light a new fire, which the people would light to take back to their homes. The lighting of the fire may have been a symbolic act of death and rebirth to coincide with death and rebirth of the earth, or they believed this ritual returned the sun back to them each year. The Celts practiced their beliefs until the Romans invaded and conquered Celtic territory in what is today England and Wales. According to History.com, by 43 CE, the Roman Empire had conquered the majority of Celtic territory. In the course of the 400 years that they ruled the Celtic lands, 2 festivals of Roman origin were possibly combined with the traditional Celtic celebration of Samhain. The first was Feralia, a day in late October when the Romans traditionally commemorated the passing of the dead. The second was a day to honor Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruit and trees. The symbol of Pomona is the apple, and the incorporation of this celebration into Samhain probably explains the tradition of bobbing for apples that are practiced today on Halloween. Harvest festivals are common throughout the world, and it's possible the Romans combined their celebrations with the Celtic people, but the extent to which Roman and Celtic festivals overlapped is disputed by some historians. Some historians believe the Roman festivals didn't influence Samhain at all. The Romans conquered the Celtic territory until 313 CE, when Emperor Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, which accepted Christianity. 10 years later, it had become the official religion of the Roman Empire. As the Roman Empire controlled the territory to help indoctrinate them into the Christian faith, the newly formed Roman Catholic Church started to co-opt pagan beliefs in order to convert people to Christianity. Around 601 CE, Pope Gregory I issued an edict to his missionaries to leave the native people's beliefs and customs alone. The Pope instructed his missionaries to consecrate the natural elements the Celts worshipped in God's name. A common example given by the Pope was, If a group of people worship the tree, rather than cut it down, he advised them to consecrate it to Christ and allow its continued worship. A few years later, on May 13th, 609 or 610 CE, Pope Boniface IV consecrated the pagan temple, the Pantheon, in Rome to the Virgin Mary and all the martyrs. The Pope dedicated the day to All Martyrs' Day. According to some accounts, around 731 CE, Pope Gregory III dedicated an oratory in the original St. Peter's Basilica in honor of all saints on November 1st. All Martyrs' Day was changed to All Saints' Day and moved from May 13th to November 1st to possibly coincide with the pagan festival of Samhain. In 837 CE, Pope Gregory IV ordered the observance of All Saints' Day on November 1st, which fortified its celebration on that day. Over time, the day before All Saints' Day became known as All Saints' Eve, or All Hallows' Eve, then All Hallows' Evening, which over time was shortened to All Hallows' Even, then Hallows' Even, and finally to Halloween. Around 1000 CE, the Church made November 2nd All Souls' Day to honor the dead. It is the last day of All Hallow Tide, 3 days commemorating the dead. All Hallows' Eve, or now Halloween, All Hallows' Day, and All Souls' Day. Possibly as early as the 8th century or 12th century, and definitely by the 16th century. Soul cakes or soul mass cakes, small round cakes to commemorate the dead in many Christian traditions, were given out to soulers, mainly consisting of children and the poor. The soulers went from door to door during the days of All Hallows' Eve, singing and saying prayers for souls. The practice lasted into the early 20th century. This tradition, along with bell snickling, a Christmas tradition of going from house to house to perform tricks for food, paved the way for modern trick-or-treating. Over time, Halloween became more Christianized. Soon Halloween would take root in the New World, as settlers from Britain and Western Europe brought this and other traditions over. With the arrival of the Irish, the tradition of Halloween would start to rekindle some of Samhain's more traditional festivities. Part 2. Halloween travels to the United States. In 1820, Washington Irving published Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which tells the story of Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman. In the story, the Headless Horseman throws something at Ichabod Crane. The narrator at first believes it is a horseman's head, but the next day the people only find a, quote, shattered pumpkin, unquote, in Ichabod's hat. Washington Irving intentionally left the ending open to interpretation of whether Ichabod Crane survived the assault and what was thrown at him. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, along with other stories, was reissued in 1848, right as the Irish were coming to America. A picture from 1864 of the fateful scene depicts a headless horseman holding what appears to be a pumpkin in his hands, before he throws it at Ichabod Crane. And another picture of a wood engraving from 1876 appears to show the head of the horseman as a pumpkin. Halloween traveled with the Irish immigrants to the United States in the early 1800s. With the potato famine from 1845 to 1852, the Irish started to leave Ireland in droves and travel to the United States to avoid starvation. When they arrived, they brought their myths and traditions with them, including Halloween. The pumpkin had already become associated with Halloween, and the 1949 Disney cartoon version of Irving's tale reinforced the idea for modern audiences, the headless horseman carried and threw a pumpkin at his victims. It's possible the combination of Washington Irving's story, along with the arrival of the Irish, and the ease it took to carve pumpkins, caused the pumpkin to replace turnips and other fruits and vegetables as the new jack-o'-lantern. By the late 19th and early 20th century, Halloween had become a popular night for everyone, especially teenagers and hooligans. Pranks, vandalism, and other mischief caused some people to act to stop the tomfoolery. Early parades and Halloween celebrations occurred throughout the United States. Parades were thrown in Scranton, Pennsylvania in 1894 and in 1895 Topeka, Kansas. Also in 1895, Anderson, Indiana had a Halloween parade, and prizes were given out to the 3 ladies and 3 gentlemen with the most grotesque appearance and the one presenting the finest appearance. Halloween was already celebrated throughout the United States by the early 20th century, but it appears the destructive element was the focus. In 1912, Elizabeth Krebs from Kansas woke up the day after Halloween to find her garden destroyed. The following year, 1913, she threw a party for all the kids in the town to prevent such damage. Some of the kids showed up, but not all of them. The next day, she discovered several gardens destroyed again. So, in 1914, she worked with local law enforcement and other agencies to form a town-wide parade with games and treats. This time, the town experienced less mayhem. Because of the success of the parade, it became an annual event which eventually spread to other cities and states. In 1920, Anoka, Minnesota, a Halloween committee decided to throw a parade with a bonfire and free candy to curb delinquency. It is considered the Halloween capital of the world because in 1937, the members of the Anoka Commercial Club sent a 12-year-old Anoka local, Harold Blair, to Washington, D.C. to formally designate Anoka the Halloween capital of the world. The documents were destroyed in a fire, so we don't know if the town was designated as the Halloween capital of the world in 1937, but in 2002 they made it official. Already by 1927, the phrase "trick or treat" appeared in an article in a Canadian newspaper. By then, kids were going house to house to get treats. Offering treats to the kids may have been another way people adapted Halloween to curb the yearly delinquency. This continued until World War II, when sugar rationing cut down on the supply of candy. After World War II, trick-or-treating erupted in the United States. The baby boom, along with the end of sugar rationing and the rapid development of suburban homes close together, primed the culture for Halloween and trick-or-treaters. The popularity and commercialization of the holiday only grew, and with it, people started to buy their costumes instead of making them themselves. It also got a huge boost as horror films from the 70s and 80s, such as the films Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street, among others, helped shape our contemporary perception of Halloween today.
Of course, No Halloween would be complete without a few ghost stories, and Clermont County's history is full of spooky tales. Take, for example, the Morse house in Amelia. Its owner, Increase Morse, was born in New Hampshire. He was the descendant of Puritan settlers. His relatives included John Greenleaf Whittier, a poet, and Samuel F. B. Morse, the inventor of the telegraph. However, Increase's life was marred by tragedy. In 1827, he and his friend Dana Dudley set off on a journey to the western United States and Europe. In Louisiana, they visited one of Increase's relatives. It was here that Dana contracted yellow fever and died. A sentimental man of a sentimental age, Increase included a plaque on his grave monument commemorating his friend. Increase would go on to make the grand tour of Europe. Following his return, he took up residence in Cincinnati, where he lived from roughly 1830 to 1855. He had various occupations during his time there. In 1850, Increase married Caroline Whitaker in Kenton County, Kentucky. Caroline became ill after giving birth to their first child. Her physician recommended that she move to the country for fresher air, a remedy suggested to people who had tuberculosis, although whether or not she was afflicted is unclear. They subsequently established themselves in Amelia, where Increase's sister and her family resided. Morse then went on to open a general store and was a quick success. In 1872, John Morse, their son, died at the age of 14 of a gunshot wound. It is speculated that he had forgotten to unload a gun following a hunt, or that it might have accidentally discharged when he was trying to clear a jam. Others have ruled it a suicide. John's death occurred when he was the only one at home. Furthermore, in the 19th century, suicide could ruin the reputation of a family, so perhaps the true cause of John's unfortunate end was swept under the rug. Regardless of the circumstances, it is said that the Morse house is haunted by his spirit. The house used to sit at the corner of Main and Oak Street. In 1998, it was located to a property across from St. Bernadette's Catholic Church, at the corner of Jenny Lind and Locust Lane roads. Rick Crawford, a local historian who had a penchant for the spooky, mentions the tale of Cornelius Conway in his A Haunted History of Clermont County, which I might add is available at the library. He was a fireman on the railroad, meaning that he shoveled coals into the engine. In 1863, John Hunt Morgan's raiders terrorized Indiana and Ohio. In Miamiville, his men derailed the train by piling ties upon the track. Upon the train was Conway. His body was killed, but not his spirit. In 1905, a boy saw a ghost along the tracks holding a lantern. When he told his father, he said that it was Conway warning travelers. Though a ghost, a benevolent one. Other stories about the apparition have become part of local lore. After a story about Conway appeared in 1980, there were even more reports of spectral sightings. The ghost may still be haunting the tracks today. This story harkens back to the Irish tale of Stingy Jack. In this tale, Jack tricks the devil into banning him from hell, but due to his deceit, he is not allowed to enter heaven. After he dies, he is cursed to roam the world carrying a lantern made from a turnip with an ember of hellfire to light his way. You may know him better as Jack of the Lantern or Jack-o'-lantern. In another story, Crawford relates the tale of Utopia, a locale near the Brown County border along the Ohio River on U.S. Route 52. It was founded as a spiritualist commune in 1847. The Spiritualists believed that they could communicate with the dead and conducted seances. Their religious movement really marks the beginning of our modern fascination with ghosts and the afterlife. It was intended as a social experiment, and its leader's name was John Waddles. After purchasing the land from its previous owners, they took down one of the structures and moved it to within a few hundred yards of the river. But on December the 13th, 1847, a flash flood hit the building, collapsing it. Only 6 people inside the building survived. Crawford says, "The spiritualists believe that the deceased would survive as spirits that can communicate with the living, usually through a medium, and it is believed that Waddles was the medium for the community." The rebuilt house still stands today, and when people go to the second floor, where the spiritualists held their meetings, people can see 6 spirits walking towards the house. Some believe these are the 6 survivors looking for the rest of their community. If any of our viewers have ghost stories, whether they're from Clermont County or elsewhere, we'd love to hear about them. Please post them in the comments section. Thank you for viewing. The information that we've provided here is not an exhaustive summary of the origins of Halloween or of the strange history of Clermont County. To find more out about the origins of Halloween and also a haunted history of Clermont County and other places, please visit one of our library's 10 locations. Thank you for your time, and have a happy Halloween! No, really, thank you.